This is the ThingWorx REST API tutorial. REST stands for Representational State Transfer and is a software architectural style common in the World Wide Web. Any application which implements a RESTful interface can be communicated with using standard syntax very simply. ThingWorx has a REST API that is entirely accessible via URL using the following syntax. You have the protocol, the host and port, /ThingWorx here represents accessing ThingWorx on the Tomcat server. For entity collection, you'll put something like things, thing templates, resources, whatever type of entity you're trying to look up or utilize. Entity will be the name of the entity of that type. In this case, you're trying to look up a thing called ThingWorx Training Maintenance Blog. The entire first line of this REST API URL is a valid REST API call in and of itself. It uses GET to retrieve information about this particular thing. If I want to look up the services and properties located on my thing, I type the protocol. It's on localhost and the port is default, so I don't need to type it. ThingWorx instance. I'm looking up a thing called my thing. And here you can see the property definitions, service definitions are additional REST API calls that you could make. If I click on one of these, notice how it updates the URL. And here I can see all of the properties. The characteristic collection refers to the next level that I'm looking up. In this case, I'm looking at property definitions. I could instead have clicked on service definitions, and that's the collection I'm looking at now. If I'd like to run one of these services, then I have to change service definitions to services. I would also have to type the name of a service that I'd like to run. Let's do this simple Hello World service. Before I can run any services using the REST API, I need to go to the platform subsystem and update the configuration. I have to make sure that Allow Request Method Switch is checked. If this is checked, then I should be able to run any REST API call from the browser. Next, I need to add the REST API parameters, specifically that the method type here is POST. This service doesn't take any parameters, and I don't have to specify a return type or an input parameter type, so now I can just hit enter, and here you see the return Hello World. Another useful tool for sending API requests to ThingWorx is called Postman. It's a free application. It's useful because it allows you to specify a body in several different types. It also helps encode for you. So if you need to put a string that's encoded properly in the URL, you can do that by highlighting over a certain part of it. And right-clicking, encode URI component. And now this is URI encoded. It's really nice when you're sending in parameters to use Postman. Here you can see a parameter called JSON in, which goes with this service. This is a very simple JSON parsing service that just pulls out the property name and returns it. Let's call this service from Postman. You see the URL, protocol, host, ThingWorx, things, the name of the thing. We're going to run a service called parse JSON service. It's type POST, and notice how you select the type here as opposed to denoting it here using a question mark. This is the name of the parameter, and it goes in the body. When using Postman, you have to add headers under the Headers tab and authorization to access the ThingWorx platform. Here, the input type is application/JSON, which is denoted by this content type header. We're expecting to receive application/JSON, and so that is the accept type. Authorization here can be added by going to the Authorization tab. If you select Basic Authorization and put the administrator password, and then click Update Request, you'll find it adds the authorization to the headers. So now let's send this request, and the return results appear down here. Notice the result of the request is testing prop, which does correspond with the property name. Now I'd like to demonstrate a few more examples. So if we'd like to update one of these two properties, we can do that simply using another request type called put. Here we're going to update a property, so we put properties, the name of the property, method type equals put, and the value that we'd like to set it to equals hello. Nothing appears because there were no errors. If we go back to the platform, we see the value updated right here. If we'd like to update both of these properties at once, we can do that also, and very simply using Postman. Let's add our authorization to our headers. Here we have content type application/JSON, as that's the format we're going to use to pass in the parameters. Property 1 will set to hello world, and property 2 is an integer that will set to 10. We have selected put instead of post this time. And here we have star instead of the name of a specific property because we want them all to update. Okay, and we have a successful run, 200. So if we go here and refresh, we see the new values are populated.